Tom, we already talked about MVS last week. We'll take the L, at least for 1 week.
Yep.
I did not see him saving your season, and I still don't. But if you picked him up and started him this past week, he got you the long touchdown, and that's what you look for from MVS. But it's not even him who I think is a potential guy you can start every week. Let's go with 2 more guys that I like. Christian Watson from the Packers, kind of the forgotten man. He comes out and has a career best day this past weekend against the Bears, making big plays down the field. Now, I think a lot of people kept him. He's rostered in roughly 45% of Yahoo leagues right now. A lot of people kept him, I think, because of his upside, that theoretical upside, the fact that the offense is good. But there's a good chance he was dropped and is somebody who maybe you can trust going forward, at least as a wide receiver 3, maybe make a big play or 2.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Tom Brawley, we soldier on into week 12 of the 2024 NFL season, and we soldier on into what continues to be, in my opinion, the worst waiver wire season in the history of fantasy football. And the explanation to this point is simple. Now, I don't believe in jinxes, but the explanation is simple. No running backs are getting hurt.
Nope.
Like,
not at all.
There's been no handcuffs that have really come to pass. And, you know, the ones who did were Jordan Mason because Christian McCaffrey didn't play in the first place. And wide receivers aren't as easily replaceable on the waiver wire as running backs are. And look, if you were like me, and I've had a lot of success drafting hero RB or zero RB teams. I've had a lot of success doing that. Not so much this year. It has been a down year for that strategy. And look, it continues in week number 12 where, Tom, let's just knock running back off, like kind of right off the bat.
Yeah.
Who's the best? Cam Akers? Because they seem to be protecting Aaron Jones. I mean, this is kind of wild here. I mean, you have Zamir White as one of our highest ranked running backs on the waiver wire simply because he's getting carries, but he's doing nothing with them. It's really kind of staggering.
Yeah, and that situation's even up in the air because he picked up a quad injury and left that game early, but he was listed as questionable and didn't return. Madison was ruled out, so Amir Abdullah might be a thing this week, and Dylan Lobby is also a potential who's been a healthy scratch so far this season. So, yeah, this has been a pretty rough year for the running back position. Roschon Johnson, potentially. He had a little bit.
Carries,
yeah, he had a goal line carry. He was a little bit more involved with the new offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, taking over. So, but yeah, you're right, Joe. I mean, even last week with Audric Estime, we were maybe a little bit excited because there was actually a little bit of movement in the backfield, but it went right back to being Javonte Williams' backfield this past week. So we're still in stash mode, I think, right now. This is the time of year to do it. Zach Charbonnet has been dropped in quite a few leagues. He's at 42% owned. Blake Corum, Ray Davis, some of these other top handcuffs. I think we're at this stage right now. If you don't have your your top guys backed up at this point, I think that now's a safe time to do it here, starting in week 12.
So I have to point out here that we're really scratching the bottom of everything. But when it comes to Javonte Williams, Ryan Heath pointed out in his 5 stats to know article this week that when Sean Payton says, hey, we're going to ride the hot hand, essentially what it looks like he means is, oh, the first guy in this backfield who rips off a decent run, that's just going to be the guy we're going to ride the rest of the game. So, and Javonte Williams gets the first crack at that. So he's probably the better option. Tom, let's go to the tight end position because there's actually some interesting names there. And I was talking on SiriusXM Fantasy Football Morning show on Monday, and I got a question from a caller about Taysom Hill, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure the only 2 tight ends I would definitely start over Taysom Hill the rest of the way are Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. Like, those are the only 2 where I'd do it kind of without question. Because when I look at somebody like Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts, well, what's their floor? Travis Kelce just had 2.8 points in a PPR. Yeah. Pitts just had 1.8. So what's Taysom Hill's floor? The same thing. And I don't see Kyle Pitts going for 160 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns the way Taysom Hill did. So, Taysom Hill's out there. He's a must pick up. He's rostered in over 50% of Yahoo leagues, so he's on the fringes. But, Tom, one guy to point out is Will Dissly. The Chargers are going more pass heavy, which also leans into Justin Herbert becoming the usable fantasy quarterback that he's kind of teased us with being his entire career. But hasn't been in recent years. But that new pass-heavy approach for those Chargers that you saw on Sunday Night Football, you're looking at Will Dissly reaching 4 receptions in 5 of his last 6 games. He has a huge target share. He is really in the top half of tight ends in terms of usability right now.
Yeah, and we can pick him up and play him this week. This is a really bad week for buys. 6 teams are on buy, including Taysom Hill. So I wouldn't hesitate to go pick him up and stash him for the stretch run here. But we got guys like Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid, who's also dealing with a knee injury, Evan Ingram, Taysom Hill. So, there's a lot of tight ends on by, and Dissly is the top pickup for me. You kind of laid it out there with his receptions in the last couple of games. But it also, it's more of a systemic thing with the Chargers here. They've really decided we're going to lean into our quarterback here and throw the ball a lot. We saw it again last night against the Bengals. They ranked 6th in pass rate over expectation over the last month. So this is a team that's really leaning into Justin Herbert. And then we look at this schedule coming up for Will Dissly. Baltimore, who's been very friendly to tight ends. Atlanta can't slow anybody down on defense. Kansas City has been one of the best matchups for tight ends, and then Tampa Bay, who's right up there with Kansas City and Baltimore. So it's just a premier slate of games here coming up for Will Dissly, combined with what the Chargers are doing on offense right now, with how heavy, pass heavy they've gone in the last month. Dissly could be this guy, another tight end here. It was pretty dire in the first couple of weeks of the season, but this is another guy kind of like Cade Otton potentially, who's been a guy that you want to start here, top half of the, like a top 6, top 8 option. Dissly could be another one of these types that comes out of nowhere and is a startable tight end 1 here for the back half of the season here.
One of the position where you've probably been hurt the absolute most right now is at wide receiver. And while, like I said, it's much harder to replace a wide receiver than it is a running back on the waiver wire historically. But there are some guys who've shown signs of life. Tom, we already talked about MVS last week. We'll take the L, at least for 1 week.
Yep.
I did not see him saving your season, and I still don't. But if you picked him up and started him this past week, he got you the long touchdown, and that's what you look for from MVS. But it's not even him who I think is a potential guy you can start every week. Let's go with 2 more guys that I like. Christian Watson from the Packers, kind of the forgotten man. He comes out and has a career best day of this past weekend against the Bears, making big plays down the field. Now, I think a lot of people kept him. He's rostered in roughly 45% of Yahoo leagues right now. A lot of people kept him, I think, because of his upside, that theoretical upside, the fact that the offense is good. But there's a good chance he was dropped and is somebody who maybe you can trust going forward, at least as a wide receiver 3, maybe make a big play or 2.
Yeah, it's worth checking out to see if he's on your waiver wire. They were coming off their bye in week 10, so that's why he's back on the waiver wire report here. We see these guys that are around 50% owned, and then they hit their bye and they're dropped in 5 to 10% of leagues. So there's a chance he might be out there. The important number for me for him was he was at a 70% route share in week 11, and that's also notable because they're coming out of their bye. It was almost like Matt LaFleur made a decision to get Christian Watson more involved. He's been rotating with Dontavian Wicks a little bit more. They were actually pulling off Jaden Reed off the field a little bit more this past week as well. So this might be a decision they're making to get Watson more involved and to open up this downfield passing attack. We know Jordan Love's been a little banged up here the last couple of weeks, and he started the season with an injury. So hasn't been quite right all year. Maybe things are starting to turn around a little bit for him health-wise, and maybe this is going to open up Christian Watson as a downfield threat again. And now that he's back at that 70% route share, maybe bigger things are coming for him down the stretch.
Tom, I was on a DFS hot streak. That DFS hot streak, and believe me, I'm a single entry, low entry bro. I'll leave the MME to Scott Barrett and Jake Tribby and those guys, and and John Proctor over at FantasyPoints.com. You all know about them. I'm a big single entry bro, and I had been on a hot streak. That hot streak expired this week, but I did nail my low end play. It was Elijah Moore of the Cleveland Browns. He had been targeted 21 times in Jameis Winston's 2 starts. Winston continued to go back to Elijah Moore this past weekend against the Saints. He is available in over 90% of Yahoo leagues. The only issue I potentially foresee here is Cleveland waving the white flag. That defense quit, by the way.
Yes.
We saw it happen. And the question is, do they quit enough that we're just going to go to Dorian Thompson-Robinson to see if there's a chance he becomes a long-term player for us?
Yeah, and that could happen in the near future. We saw DTR get a little bit of run last week at the end of the game once they were down by 3 scores there. So that's always a possibility. Yeah, the Browns would love to probably lock up a top 3 or a top 5 pick, and DTR is probably going to help them do that. So we'll probably see Winston, his time as the starter, probably come to an end in the near future, but they play on Thursday night here. He has been at 41 plus pass attempts in his first 3 starts. So that means there's been a lot of targets to go around for Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, and Elijah Moore has been right there with those guys. 35 targets over his last 4 games in which Winston has appeared. He's averaging 8.8 targets per game in that stretch. And it finally kind of paid off this past week. Had 66 yards and a touchdown. So short week here again. We do look towards the slot a little bit more whenever we're going against the Steelers secondary. It's been a spot where they have been picked on. So Elijah Moore could be a guy that's widely available here. 92% of Yahoo leagues who you could pick up. This is a 6-team bye week, so you could be hurting at the position. He's a guy you can pick up and plug in here for maybe at least 1 week here as your wide receiver 3.
All right, Tom, I want to talk about the Colts passing game as a whole, because I think you can make a good argument that the current version of Michael Pittman right now is either the 3rd or 4th best receiver on Indianapolis. But the overarching question I have is, how real was Anthony Richardson looking like a competent NFL quarterback after what we saw at the beginning of the season? And I'm not willing to dive into those waters yet, but Anthony Richardson, the version we saw, can support Josh Downs, can support A.D. Mitchell, maybe can support Pittman, who's obviously banged up, and that's why I said the current version of Pittman. Even Alec Pierce in like a GPP dart throw. How real do you think it is, and is Anthony Richardson a premier waiver ad in your opinion?
I don't know how real I think it is, but I do think Shane Steichen catered the offense a little bit more towards him. He was getting more design runs for him earlier in the game, and everything kind of opened up from there. So I think we're going to see a better Anthony Richardson than we've seen to this point in the year. I also think he's a little bit more motivated, and he got his eyes opened up a little bit by the benching for 2 games there for Joe Flacco, and I do think we're going to see a better version of him. I did go out and picked him up in a couple of leagues and played him this past week, and I'll probably continue to use him here for another week or 2 to see if this does remain real. And Alec Pierce, I think, is back on the radar at wide receiver. We're as I said, it's a 6-team bye week, so you might have to dig a little deeper on your waiver wire to find a player or 2 that you have to start. And I think Alec Pierce is real whenever Anthony Richardson is in the lineup, and he was back to playing that downfield threat, and he looked good here. So I'm looking at Anthony Richardson. If he's going to run a little bit more, especially down at the goal line, that was something we haven't necessarily seen a lot of to start the season, but had the 2 goal line touchdowns in this game. And the schedule, it's not ideal. He's got Detroit and New England and Denver surrounding a bye also in week 14. So it's not ideal, but this is the guy we drafted in the 5th or 6th round. The guy that was going to run a little bit, make the downfield throws. And he was much more efficient in this game. 20 completions. He had failed the top 10 completions in 5 of his first 6 starts. So we'll see if it's real. The initial signs here are promising, and then I think you want to buy into that. So I think he's worth an ad here.
All right, Tom, I want to tell everybody there's going to be a little tease here. If you haven't subscribed to FantasyPoints.com yet, now look, you can use the code YouTube25, get 25% off what's already a severely discounted subscription. But stay tuned for Thanksgiving and Black Friday week, because we've got a lot of good stuff to tell you about at FantasyPoints.com. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we really appreciate it. It has helped us grow tremendously. That's T-Bro. I'm Joe. This is week 12. We'll be back with good friend Trey on the Best Bet Show on Thursday. I appreciate each and every one of you. Goodbye.